Money. Where did it come from? If you'd asked me this question when I was at university, I would have told you that it was created as a replacement for the barter system that people were using many thousands of years ago. After all, that's what's being taught in most economics textbooks, so it must be right. Right? Wrong. Before we get into why anthropologists are pulling their hair out over barter, let's just clarify what barter actually is. Tom the toolmaker needs to feed his family of 5, but he's run out of bread for their favourite sandwiches. He decides to visit Bruce the baker to stock up for his meal. He asks Brucey for 3 loaves of bread. In return, Tom will give him some of his high quality tools. Bruce is in need of some tools, so he agrees to this and the trade goes through without a hitch.
This is
Barter, an exchange of goods or services without using money. Now imagine the very next day. Tom the toolmaker is in need of some meat, so he decides to visit Billy the butcher. Now Billy the butcher doesn't need Tom's tools, but he does need clothes. To complete this trade, Tom the toolmaker needs to find someone that will trade clothes for his tools, so he can go back to Billy and get his meat. Simple, right? Well, no, not really. As you can imagine, this sort of system is not straightforward at all and would become very messy very quickly. This is where money steps into the situation to solve the issue. A little while ago, I visited the British Museum to speak to Ben Alsop, the curator at the City Money Gallery, about this very topic.
What's most likely is that you have a system of credit and debt. That makes more sense, because otherwise you need what's called the double coincidence of wants. And that implies that if you want something from me, I have to have something you want. What's more likely is if we know each other and we trust each other, then we're more likely to have a system of credit and debt. So that shows you that the kind of these modern words that we hear bandied around about the financial world are actually rooted in thousands of years worth of history.
Let's go back to that key phrase, the double coincidence of wants. In other words, a transaction based on barter can only take place if both parties have something that the other party wants or needs enough to be willing to exchange. Now, this has all kinds of limitations. I mean, imagine trying to do this for everything you needed for your entire family for an entire week. The food you all eat, the clothes you wear, the utensils you cook with, even the place you live in. Another issue is that people would have different values for different products. It would be difficult to have one agreed measure when you're going through these barter exchanges. Now, despite the obvious flaws in this system, this theory has stood the test of time. According to countless economics textbooks, many articles, publications, and even the father of economics himself, Adam Smith, this is what took place before money was created. And yet, the theory is wrong. Anthropologists say that to date, no proof has ever been found to show that this world of barter ever existed. And more specifically, this was not part of the origin story of money. Professor Dame Caroline Humphrey from Cambridge University studied the history of barter, and she said, "No example of a barter economy, pure and simple, has ever been described, let alone the emergence from it of money. All available ethnography suggests that there never has been such a thing." But bartering does exist. It's just not in the way that people have been led to believe. It's not used because there is no money in circulation, but rather it takes place in societies where money does exist, but there's just a lack of it. In some cases, bartering doesn't take place within the villages themselves, but instead it happens between strangers or even enemies. An example of this is the Nambiquara of Brazil. These are indigenous people who live in the Amazon, and there are around 1,200 of them split into different bands. And these bands usually don't have contact with each other. However, one band might notice that there's another one set up nearby and may approach them about the option of meeting to discuss trading items. If this other band agrees, then they'll arrange for the men to come and visit them for this meeting. Before the meeting, all of the band's women and children will be hidden away. Then the trade meeting kicks off by each chief making a speech. The chief will make a speech explaining how great and amazing the other band is, while simultaneously knocking their own band and talking about how awful they are. The bands will then sing and dance before the trading begins. Now, men from one band will approach men from the other band to see if they have anything that they like. If the other man has got something they want, then they'll compliment it and talk about how great it is and how much they admire it, the thing that they want from the other person. If they have something of their own that they want to trade, they'll knock it and say how bad it is. They'll say it's awful, the thing that they own, but the thing the other person owns is great. So if we think about it, it may go a little something like this. Hey John, I love your necklace. It's such a nice design and makes you look so powerful. I have a sword, but it's rubbish. It's so old and it looks crap. The funny thing is, this wouldn't actually be communicated in a friendly way. It would be done in an aggressive, confrontational style. So then, once both parties had finished arguing about how bad their own possessions are and made an agreement to trade for the thing that they want, the men would be ready to execute the exchange. Now, this wouldn't simply be done by handing the items over. Instead, it would be done in an aggressive way. Rather than handing over the items, they would snatch the item from each other. So Philip would actually rip the necklace off John's neck, and John will grab the sword out of Philip's hand, and then the exchange is complete. Following this, they'll all have a big feast together, and the women who have been hiding in the forest will return to join in with the party, before eventually the bands part ways once again. Now, as you can see, the history of barter and its involvement in the creation of money is not quite the way that many of us have been led to believe. And you might actually be surprised about how true that is for many aspects in the history of our economies and financial systems.